Influencer and social media marketing for the world's most memorable brands. Dorothea teaches executives, marketers, and business leaders how to increase value and develop strong relationships between brands and fans. Dorothea is a CNN subject matter expert, TED speaker, a Webby's judge, and a keynote speaker. Additionally, Dorothea has appeared as a subject matter expert in social media and marketing strategy on CBS and for Ellie Welch's business show on CNN. Some of our clients include IBM, Ryan Seacrest, the Grammy, Emirates, Oprah Winfrey Network, Intercontinental, Coca-Cola, etc., etc. Dorothea is an avid skateboarder who tweets to relax. You can follow her on TikTok, Twitter Now, X, and Instagram, and social espionage. Following Fintech South, Dorothea is the opening keynote at SourceCon 2023 next week in Minneapolis. Please help me welcome Dorothea.
I am not going to use a mic because we are using the mics rather sparingly. Can you all hear me? Can I get an amen? This is Atlanta, Georgia. Amen. Brilliant. I answer to the pronouns she, her, and please pass the champagne. I want to thank the folks at Experion for being so kind to sponsor the artificial intelligence track. They have been kind enough to sponsor the entire afternoon's events. So bravo Experion! Can I get an amen? Please allow me to introduce John Ripma. John is so cool. He turned hippie to entrepreneur. John Ripma is now finally in the city from hiding out in the mountains of North Georgia. His technology odyssey began when he purchased IBM's first PC back in 1983. He was only 2 years old. He loaded the first ever Microsoft Word for DOS. That investment was $5,000 back in the day, and it changed John's life. John's first concert, and by the way, I've done this with all of them. I made them tell me what the very first music concert was that they went to. John's first concert was a little band called The Band back in 1968. John, please join us.
Yep.
Sometimes, the smallest of beginnings are what lead to the biggest success stories. Having started 16 years ago with a 10-member team who only served a handful of clients, today we serve one of the largest non-banking provider of direct-to-customer loans in the United States, one of the world's largest automaker. One among
There's more.
Yep. Don't press any buttons.
Sometimes, the smallest of beginnings are what lead to the biggest success stories. Having started 16 years ago with a 10-member team who only served a handful of clients, today we serve one of the largest non-banking provider of direct-to-customer loans in the United States, one of the world's largest automaker, one among the world's top 5 manufacturer of heavy-duty trucks, one of the largest engineering and construction firms in the United States, the world's most valuable pharmaceutical company, with over 500 plus ecstatic clients in over 36 countries and 1,500 plus passionate Experionites. We've been growing exponentially. Sometimes it takes a small beginning to know the worth of trust, to craft exceptional customer experiences, to impact the world with solutions that deliver. Come say hello at www.experienglobal.com.
Can you hear me? Is this on? Okay, cool. Well, welcome to, actually, I hope you're having a great Fintech South. Certainly a lot going on. Welcome to our presentation of the kind of an interesting title, but the rise of AI in the fighting of financial crime. So, kind of interesting to me. But anyway, I wanted to kick this off right. I mean, this is Georgia, and I thought most of you know that we have a very good football team that I'm passionate about. But that's not really, I'm not going to talk about Georgia. But I am going to talk about, drop this name to you, a very, very famous football coach by the name of Vince Lombardi. Probably heard of him. He coached the Green Bay Packers and is an individual that's known for his amazing team meetings and some of the wisdom that he would impart to his players. And I want to tell you a little bit about that. And so we're back in 1960, July of 1961. It's the start of training season, training camp for the football players. And they're all really motivated because they lost the NFL championship the year before to the Philadelphia Eagles. And so obviously it was a bitter defeat. They lived with it for the whole offseason, and now they just can't wait to get started. So Vince Lombardi walks into the locker room, which is where we are now. You can visualize that. And there's wooden benches, and there's 38 football players all sitting on the wooden benches, and they're sitting there expecting the coach to tell them about these dazzling new plays that he's come up with and these wonderful athletic moves that he's going to teach them, help them teach them. And they will be able to raise their own personal games to a new level. And so, they're kind of pumped up about that. But that's not what Coach has in mind. He has something totally different in mind. And this is why I brought this up. He got up in front of these players. Now keep in mind, these are grizzled football players who have been playing the game all their life. And he said, "This is a football." And they did just what you did. They snickered, they laughed. And what was he trying to tell them? He was trying to tell them that the basic fundamentals of football are blocking, tackling, catching, running, all of those, right? And if you neglect those fundamentals, there's a heavy price to pay. And so what his pitch was here is to let them know that because their last season, when they lost the championship, they lost it, he feels like, because they were not executing on the fundamentals. So, what does this have to do with AI and us at this point? You just saw in there that this company started back in 2006 with 10 men, and they had a vision of creating high-quality digital products and focusing on the fundamentals. And that theme has played throughout all of these years to now, 2023, that the fundamentals are critical to a successful outcome to our clients. And, in this world that we live in with these dazzling new products like AI and everything else that's out there, you tend to get kind of focused on those kind of things and maybe lose sight of the fundamentals. I don't know if that's ever happened to you. It has happened to me. And if you lose sight of the fundamentals, your platform that everything else is resting on tends to be wrong. And I don't think Kirby Smart, I know Kirby Smart focuses on the fundamentals, no doubt about it. So, anyway, I just want to bring this up because I think that it applies to everyone, that we do need to be reminded now and then that the fundamentals are often the thing that really makes a difference between a successful product and a novel market or not successful. So I think Coach Lombardi had it right. I think focusing on the fundamentals is exactly what we should do. Thanks.
You all can hear me, right? Okay, brilliant. So how many of you are using BrainDate? I'm supposed to be ambassador for it. Yeah, BrainDate, right? You're really excited about it, huh? Yeah. I was talking to Sudhir and Nair about it earlier. BrainDate. It's kind of like being put in a round room and been told to pee in the corner. Yeah, okay. Use BrainDate. Okay. So, there's my big plug for BrainDate. Okay, so, let me introduce our illustrious panel. I've already talked to you a little bit about the lovely John Ripma. Please allow me to move on to the gentleman who was kind enough to butcher my name earlier, but he didn't. Siraj Alimohamed is a data and analytics expert with almost 2 decades of experience. So Siraj, you can go ahead and walk up. Of experience working with blue chip companies globally, helping address their data challenges. He's a certified specialist on all leading tools in DNA. He has been using his tool agnostic technical skills to help clients identify the right technology stack, define roadmaps, and enable them to be more effective in their analytics journey. He has been living in London since 2010, when he is not working with data. Siraj often spends his time making music with his children. His first concert was a band called Colonial Cousins, which I Googled and really couldn't find a lot about. So
There's a lot of opportunity for them to go ahead.
Yes.
Thank you all.
Yeah. Bravo you. Okay. The next, now I'm going to butcher his name, but I'm going to try. Pradeep Vancheeswaran. Did I get it right? Bravo me. Okay. Comes with 3 decades of international experience in BFSI and has delivered several large and complex digital transformation initiatives for banks, buy, sell, and trade institutions, stock exchanges, clearinghouses, fintechs, and insurance companies around the globe. He holds a master's degree from London Business School. Pradeep is a Renaissance man. This is my words, not his. As during his free time, he enjoys biking long distance and playing an Indian bongo drum called the I want to make sure I say this right. Marudongo. Did I say it right? Okay, and actually it does look like a bongo drum. He's kind of the Brian Jones, truly, of Experion Technologies. You laugh, but truly he is. You should see it. There's some video out there. His first concert was KJ Yesudis. Did I say it right?
Yes.
Yeah, and by the way, there actually is evidence of KJ Yesudis. I did find KJ Yesudis on YouTube. Why can't you guys just be Stones fans? Okay, I love this guy because we have ideology in common. I really love this guy. Sudhir Nair is a technology and digital operations leader and distinguished speaker with more than 25 years in various C-suite technology and operations leadership roles. Sudhir served as a C-suite executive, CDO, CIO, CTO, COO for Fortune 100 in banking and financial services, supply chain, retail, FMCG and CPG, higher education, online e-commerce, and technology. Sudhir is a C-suite executive and leader on the board of 2 leading AI-based technology companies, as well as advisory board members for several others, including Harvard Business Review. Sudhir has a bachelor's in computer science engineering from University of Madras, India, and master's in systems and information from Birla Institute of Tech and Science, Milani, India. Sudhir graduated in executive management program from Harvard University. His first concert, thank you, a band I actually know, was George Michael in 1992 in Wembley Stadium. Thank you, Sudhir. Gentlemen, and thank you all.
Thank you, Dorothea, and welcome everybody. Today we are going to cover a very important topic on financial crime. This is the most important topic which is impacting organizations, pretty much all types of organizations across the globe. I think it's of specific importance to banking and financial services. That's what we wish to cover. It's a very wide topic. Before we start, let's quantify the magnitude of the problem. So why is this important? $274 billion is what is the cost of compliance incurred by organizations globally in the fight against financial crime in 2022. $22 billion is the amount of fine which was paid by banks just because they did not have enough controls to prevent money laundering from happening. 68 to 70%, let's say 2/3 of the cases which are financial crime actually originate by folks which are internal to an organization. So these are some things which are really bothering the institutions globally. At Experion, we've been actually helping our customers at various points in times to prevent fraud from happening, to fight against financial crime, and so on and so forth. But what we've realized is that it's not a simple problem to solve. Financial crime, while is spelled in two different words, is actually an encapsulation of many things. And those many things are really many, and I have actually made detailed notes of what they constitute. And it's not complete in any form or fashion, but let me give some context. Financial crime actually could include money laundering, transactions which actually happen with politically exposed parties, PEPs for short, fraud, combating the financing of terrorism, sanctions, modern slavery, human trafficking, account takeover, asset misappropriation, insider trading. The list could go on. So these are elements of financial crime. And I think to fight it holistically, AI, we believe, is going to play a very significant role in the future, and that's what we're going to see as part of this panel discussion. And with that context, Sudhir, I would like to ask you this first question. So financial crime is not new. We all know that it's been in existence for a very long time, but it has taken different shapes and forms as time evolved. What do you think are the current challenges that BFS institutions are facing, and how and what are they doing to prevent it?
I think the current challenges are probably a result of the post-pandemic, what has happened in the last, especially around the 2020 time. Most companies had to create the ability for them to do business by online commerce. And also, the adventure of remote working capabilities came that were certain other type of opportunities for bad actors to come in to penetrate into things and do things like money laundering and other aspects much more for our escape. So, if you look at pre-pandemic with post, there was roughly about the numbers are around 47% increase in what happened to the opportunity that exists to have more financial crimes being performed and so on and so forth. Now, if you go back pre-pandemic, most of us in the banking world, as well as financials world, as well as in a broader landscape of retail world, because retail also over the last 10, 12 years has significantly moved a lot of sales onto mobile platforms and other mechanisms where when you make a purchase using a mobile phone, there's a lot of opportunities for people to get into and intersect your information, your financial information, right? So that's how it was, and there was already a lot of technical debt accumulating, and then the pandemic just torpedoed that by another 47%, which was just phenomenally high. Now we are playing catch up, many are playing catch up, and so on and so forth. And that's kind of the nature of the complexity of what exists. I think the challenge has always been when you look at it from the angle of the GRC, which is governance, risk, and control. The operation side is mostly on the control, putting control points in there to make sure that you try and prevent things from happening, but not good enough. You have to really, really focus on prevention much more than that. Now, the challenge with prevention is sometimes you have to, go ahead and spend money, and you have to invest in technologies, you have to invest in other things to do it. So there's that, that piece as well. Any transactions that you make that is involving a financial transaction, whether you're buying things or you're applying for a loan or you're actually purchasing, etc., you tend to, your information is out there. And the ability for anybody to get into that information you need to make sure you secure that. That's one side of it. But the other side of it is there's also the other number, which is 70% of issues happen because of insider threat. 70% is a whopping number. What is that 70%? These are people working in companies. And all they have to do is, suddenly they saw something pop up in their emails, oh, there's a fire sale going on and you can buy a Tesla for $10,000. Click here. You click and your information is all, you've given them permission to access your information, and now you're taken through ransomware, the whole company goes down. So that's all it takes. So those are all the issues that exist, things like that. The opportunity where AI comes in is really on the prevention side. It's not about the detection, it's too late. And then if you look at the risk side, risk guys always have to accumulate enough funds that the company may have to pay in fines and other things. So there's that. So it's not on the operation side, it's not on the risk side, it's on the governance side. It's where you really need to focus on prevention and so on and so forth. That's kind of where the...
Fantastic. So that actually also covered a question that I had in mind in terms of how technology is going to aid in the fighting of financial crime. As you rightly said, a lot of it is going to hinge to how it is going to be prevented than detected at this point in time. But I think the application of AI on how it can be also detected real time is going to evolve over time. So fantastic. I'll ask this question to Siraj, in fact. Siraj, what has been the evolution of AI and how is it positioning BFS institutions to be better effective?
Thanks. I think evolution AI makes me chuckle because everyone's looking at AI and kind of thinking that's new. But as Robert showed us on the slides today, it isn't new. It has been around for a long time. And if you look at the history of things, how things have moved on, even though we knew that we're trying to replicate how our brain works, we just didn't have the power to do that effectively over time. Or we didn't have the data to do that effectively over time. So as data came along, people said, right, I can do that now, but then you didn't have the hardware, the processing power behind it. And then now everything's lining up and you're starting to do more and more in AI. And dare I say the word generative AI, because that's what everyone's kind of talking about these days, right? You get businesses on the doors, knocking on the door saying, can I get a Gen AI application out there quite quickly? And people expect it to be, us to be able to talk to it and then for it to magically identify what's happening. But at the same time, it's too early for us to dismiss off the interest or the potential of what AI could do for us. If you think about it, I think, again, reflecting back on history, right? So I think Gen AI is actually going to be it's going to be a game changer in terms of the ways of how we work. Right? So again, flashback on cloud computing, smartphones, computers. If you look at it, at least those of us who've been in the industry working in the IT tech industry for that long, you'd have seen a massive shift in the way we work over time. Right? Because if we hadn't reinvented the way we're going to do that, we would have been out of our jobs and someone else would have taken that. So that's the bit that you want to be careful about. Now, how do you tie the two so that the potential of Gen AI into fintech? I think there's massive potential in terms of what you can do, but the challenges that the organizations are struggling with is still some of that really data 101, I would say almost, right? So you're talking about not having one single source of data. I've heard that before many times, right? Not having one single source of data, not having data that's good quality that you can trust. And then people talk about data lakes and saying, hey, I've got a data lake. And then before you ask in the organization how many data lakes, you'll get another 10 or 15 around in the small gathering that you have, right? So then how do you bring all of these data together in a trusted mechanism so that you can start to make sense out of it? That's where the challenge lies, I think.
Understood. And thanks, Siraj. It's, it ties into what John was saying. Where's the data? Go back to the fundamentals to get the data right. So that's what people should really focus on to get this right, in fact. One other follow-up question. So if what is your recommendation on how the BFS institutions should better leverage AI to prevent crime? So, of course, the applicability of AI is varied. And if I have to sort of, lead you in a particular direction, so any kind of a crime will have lines of defenses to be battled. There's a first line of defense, there's a second line of defense. Typically, that is attributed to fighting financial crime, and of course, you also mentioned the third line of defense when we spoke earlier. So, how do you recommend AI should be, applied in these lines of defenses?
I think, and I like that approach to looking at it, right? Because it kind of helps you look at Gen AI, but also kind of classify the various potential that Gen AI is giving into each of these lines of defense, as you would say. So that first line of defense, and if you kind of make that sort of hub and spoke, right? So the spoke is your customer facing that line of defense, and you want to enable them in different ways so that they're able to identify issues or crime as it's happening, or suspicious activity as it's happening. I think one of you alluded to sort of real-time detection as it comes along. Things like market fluctuations, geopolitical situations, these could all be making changes or impacting your risk models that you already have, right? So do your first line of defense team have sufficient tools to update that and have the right numbers to hand? That's quite critical. Right? And then you think about how you're going to update some of that predictive modeling. That's more into the second line of defense, right? So if they do come across challenges, where are they going to rely on? And that's when the hub comes into play, right? And the hub can be supporting that line of defense, the first line of defense, in various things like, for example, enhanced credit scoring and being able to figure out personal risk profiles. There was a mention earlier on in the day about how you can create that for individuals. Narrow casting, they called it, from a different perspective, but again, how do you do that? And then it's also about being able to use large amounts of data with the LLMs that we're seeing in the market today. Natural language processing can actually help you unlock the potential behind that. So how do you enable your first line of defense through the second line to try and get that? And then the larger thing, I think, which we all kind of overlook, is that AI's potential in being able to do some stress testing with data. Right? So one of the key features that you would see is actually the ability to create synthetic data when you don't have it, so that you can actually stress test your models to make sure that it covers all the different angles that you're expecting. And that can be some of that sort of audit work. Overall, I think you need some form of tracking all of these things together and sort of a bench, a system that actually captures all of these and tracks it so that you're proactively sorting it for the future. That's what you need.
Fantastic. And Sudhir, any take on the first and second lines of defense from not from a technology point of view, but just from from an implementation point of view? I think we have just 2 more minutes, unfortunately, to finish what we have to. Any take on this?
Yeah, I think if you think about it, the first line of defense is the folks that interact with customers, or is an example of first line of defense. So back in the days, you used to walk into a branch and you used to transact. Now you do it on your phone. So that's your first line of defense. It's actually the most vulnerable. Did you ever think about that? That is the most vulnerable point, and hence, what is important is to go back to the third line of defense, which is internal, and to establish proper controls and prevention mechanisms, so that if you secure this end point of sale, right, then you're actually protecting both the bank as well as the institution as well as the customer. So that's why the third line is just the most important one from a prevention side of it. The second line is kind of where the risk, side of it comes in as well. So it's just you have to make sure that you secure that first line as much as possible. The second line is your test audits. You perform all the different aspects of that, and then the third line is the most important one, because that's where applicative technologies such as machine learning, understanding data, patterns, transactions, can give you insights into how you prevent things. So that's
Thank you. And we do not have any time to ask deep questions from the audience, but we're going to be here. Please feel free to ask questions that you have. Please get seated.
I'm just going to quickly change up the room.
I'm his cousin. No, I'm Virginia. You?
Yes.
Okay. Good. I'll tell you.
Those of you who are standing and speaking, go ahead and have a seat. Can I ask one more time? Those of you who are standing and speaking, you can go ahead and have a seat. Please have a seat. Take a fucking seat! Thank you! Am I deaf? Alright, brilliant. Please allow me to introduce you to our next session. Real-world impact of generative AI, bend the productivity and savings curve by optimizing company spending. Our first speaker, Marva, VP of Globality, is a fearless female tech leader, storyteller, and connector who is not afraid to disrupt the status quo. She's the author of Be Unexpected, a National Indie Excellence Award winner for her career, recognized at the 2023 World Changers Award, and recent media appearances and commentary on the topic of AI, privacy, data, and tech for good for News Nation, NBC, MSN, and ABC. She has been involved with TAG for over 20 years, with IBM, Splunk, and Amazon as a speaker supporter, and winner of the TAG Sales Enterprise Leader of the Year in 2018. She's also been a Leadership Atlanta Class of 2019, Kennesaw State University Masters in Health Informatics Industry Board member. She serves on the board of directors for Women in Technology. She's an executive ambassador for TechBridge. She's an operator and advisor for tech startups. A lifetime learner, she started the Executive Learning Harvard University Generative AI program, or she starts later this month. Marva's first album was the band Heart, and her first concert was Journey. Marva, if you could please join us and have a seat.
Well, we're not saying that.
Okay, that's fine.
These chairs are.
Okay, no problem. And please allow me to bring also to the stage, as it were, Bill VanCuren. Was an executive vice president and CIO for NCR Corporation. He has recently retired, and is currently the president of BBC Advisors, a strategic technology advisory for companies of all sizes, both public and private. He serves on the advisory board of Globality. He's a market leader in AI solutions for procurement. He was named the CIO of the Year in Georgia in 2011 and received the TechBridge CIO of the Year award for leading philanthropy efforts in 2018. And recently named as Lifetime Achiever by the HMG Group Executive Leadership Awards in 2023. He is the prior executive board chair for the Technology Association of Georgia and the Georgia chapter of Inspire CIO. Bill is also very active in nonprofits in the Atlanta area, such as TechBridge, the Atlanta Community Food Bank, which I'm a huge fan of, the Carter Center, where he sits on the board of counselors. Bill's first album was Aerosmith Toys in the Attic. His first concert was Blue Oyster Cult in 1978.
Back then, my color was the same. My hair was the same color as Marva's. So how many of you are here to gain some insights or ideas about how to bring AI back to your company. Notice they're all sitting in the front 3 rows. I'm pretty sure that the conversations that Marva and I have had can be summarized this way. The conversations we're currently having with leading edge CIOs who are trying to figure out how to bring AI into their company. There's a boardroom meeting or there's a leadership team meeting. The CEO is in there saying, I want to bring AI in to be more competitive. CFO sitting there saying, I want AI to help me with cost across the right? Then they turn to the CIO and say, so how do we do this? How are you going to help us bring AI into the company? Okay, so that's a symbiotic relationship that we have discovered in our travels. In this community, I have a lot of CIO peers on my network, based on the 14 years that I had as a public CIO. Yeah, so I really suck at retirement. As you can tell, took a trip to Europe, came back and said, hey, what's happening? Right? As a recently retired CIO, I can tell you, you get 100 phone calls of companies wanting you to join their boards, wanting you to advise them. I took 100 phone calls, but I only said yes to one. So we're here in the next 10, 15 minutes and talk about the one company I said yes to. In the words of Warren Buffett, if you don't understand it, don't invest in it. If you can't explain it, you don't know what it is, don't invest in it. Right? So a lot of what we're hearing about AI falls into that category. Right? Generative, et cetera, et cetera. This use case we're going to talk about here for the next few minutes is very understandable, very relatable. So it's all about business outcomes, right?
It is. So Bill used to be my customer at NCR when I worked for Splunk and IBM. And when I explained this technology to him, he said, I want to learn more. And what's been really interesting is what he's saying. People are asking about AI and they're experimenting. What drew me to this company was there's no experimenting. We're going to talk to you today. We're going to be very specific. We're going to talk to you today about banking use cases. And these companies have already been using the technology for over 2 years, and they're using about $5 billion of spend through the platform. And we're going to talk about an area in the company that's not sexy. And I like sexy, I'm just going to say it. Dorothea, you see how sexy she is. It is procurement and sourcing. How sexy is that? Do we have any procurement and sourcing leaders in the audience? No, we don't. Oh, Bill. But we have CIOs.
Those are the ones that got up and left and got yelled at.
Yeah. I know. And one of them had this cool T-shirt that said, I love AI. And I was all excited to have him come up and sit in the front row when he left. So it's not sexy. But if you really think about it, what has not been disrupted? We're going to hear about all these cool technologies, but everyone's using SAP, Coupa, Oracle, and all it is a digital automation of a process. It's nothing disruptive. So that's what we're going to share with you today. Bill?
Well, I'm not a Gartner analyst or a Forrester analyst, right? But I think this panel said it well. AI is not new, right? A lot of the big companies that we all work with, like the Salesforce has their Einstein and so on, you name other companies, they're either acquiring or embedding AI into their core workflow. There's actually very few companies who are founded in AI as a foundation and have gone to market. So I think this is just a testimonial that this is one of those companies.
What attracted me to this company, and there's a lot of startups here, and when you join a company, and I did work for some very, very big companies, so for me to go join a startup as an operator is a pretty big risk. And so what you look at is, do they have a shipping product that is not made in a country that has rules that people can't use for security? So do they have a shipping product that works? And do they have happy customers? And what does their board look like? Now, the only thing I will say, I know you're going to look at this picture, especially since we're here in Atlanta. I'm a woman. I'm on women technology. This is not a diverse board. They absolutely need to work on that. But with that said, if you look at the companies that people are from, we're talking Apple, PwC, and IBM, and all HP, and all Adobe, and then all these big VC companies. So it's the backing and the focus of the board of directors is very, very impressive. We're going to show you a quick video. So also when you're looking for a job or you're looking at companies, You can look at their websites, but what I find is great, and I'm sure someone's videoing this, is organic videos. Organic videos, people get off script, and they really say how they feel. So I'm going to share with you a use case from Santander Bank. Does anyone do business here with Santander Bank? Awesome, one company. Okay, well, they're a very, very large bank based in Spain.
I didn't know what I was selling. I don't know what I was buying. I didn't know anything. But what it traps me, and I fell in love, it was because of the change management that it was happening. And one of the drivers was the implementation of Globality into the bank. It was a complete disruptive way of thinking. It's the first time that users and business, they feel owners. They don't see us as the enemy or controllers. They have the power to decide, they have the power to interact with the tool, and it's the user experience is much, much better. Less than 1 year, we have thousands of events into the platform, 2 billion, and it's only the beginning, managed through the platform, and we were able to deliver time to market, speeder, simpler and lean process. And that's something that the business is, very grateful for. And also, we were able to find new players in the market. So, to me, and we didn't lose the control that we are supposed to have. It was, amazing. It's a different change of the game because it's self-procurement, self-sourcing.
That's what you said.
And it gives you time to think about those challenges that we were talking about.
We couldn't obviously do the full demo here, but having sat on a few customer calls with Marva, I can tell you the power of AI, if you unleash it on a back office process, you can pick your process, anything that's based on Excel, Word docs, or swivel chair activities where you're moving between multiple touch points and phone calls. We chose the RFI to RFP process, right? How many of you do that in your companies? Issue an RFI, get some information, decide which company you're going to issue the RFP to, you bring that back, you sit down with your procurement team, you iterate, right? It's weeks, isn't it? I don't know if you're able to do it in days. This AI technology can do it in hours. So disruption that happens here, we can talk about any back office use case, but I think the key message for the folks in the room today is if you're worried about the perceived risks or compliance issues of generative AI, a pretty safe place to start is your back office, where the cost of the people are moving, process is slower than what you need to be.
The other area that we really have seen some interest in is, so we train the AI, so this company's been around for about 5 years, and they invested in the indirect categories, so that's the complicated categories. So IT spending, all the people that you're all selling, buying services, legal services, marketing services, and then the other real big complicated procurement one is real estate. That's a very, very, very complex. And back to your talk about fraud, your ecosystem is your employees as well. And so if you're doing business by spreadsheets and emails, that is not going to be sustainable. So this is a way to get everything in an organized system. And so far everyone's really enjoying it, and we've had a great time. So we're here in Atlanta, and we've been traveling the world. The other interesting aspect is we started with Fortune 2000. So all of our customers are very large companies. So we have customers from large banks to Johnson & Johnson and Adidas. And then even Chick-fil-A is a customer here in Georgia.
So Marva, you continue to reinvent yourself. I keep running into you, and it's really cool to be partnering with you, working for the same company now. In the past, you were selling to me, as you mentioned, and I was a buyer of IBM and Schilling. So it's pretty cool that you've been able to really reinvent yourself and follow these great trends like AI. So I just want to say I'm impressed with what you've done, but I'm also wanting you to take this last bit of time that we have and share with the audience. What is your advice as you've learned? You mentioned you're attending some classes at Harvard. You've got some books to recommend to the group. What's your advice to the folks in the room that really want to embrace and learn more about AI?
Collaboration. So I'm a huge LinkedIn fan, so if you link in with me, I have been working with people all over the world. I have some really good friends that I've made from all over the world. AI is moving fast, and people need to learn really how to explain it in their business and make different connections. And so this is a continuous learning process. There's also some great resources here in Georgia. So is anyone here from Georgia Tech? Great. So I got to meet Professor Larry, Professor Ifram. They combined all the schools of thought that connect to AI, and now there's an AI Institute here at Georgia Tech. And they've been working on this problem or opportunity for 25 years. So that's right here, Georgia Tech. Georgia State has a new undergraduate program or a certificate program in AI. They just started that this year. Kennesaw State has an informatics program as well as a fintech master's program. I'm sure you all didn't know that as well. Emory University here has an executive AI program. I got in somehow to the Harvard AI program. I know how I got in. I said, I will be the one that will ask the questions that no one else wants to ask in the room and make everyone laugh. That's what I put on my application. So I think that's how I got into my Harvard class. So I'll let you know how that goes. MIT has a class, an executive class. Bill was going to go to UT. That looked way too technical for me. I was more interested in the business class. And then Wharton and MIT are all having one. So I would say invest in yourself. If your company doesn't pay for it, who cares? Pay for it. Think of it as your hobby. Also books. Has anyone read any of these books on my picture? The first one has been around for 3 years. This is my new one. I'm a total groupie. I do not work at McKinsey, but this is my newest one, Rewired. I read their whole, I went to their whole blog. Why I like McKinsey, I like pictures, and they do a really good job with pictures and graphs. This is a $50 book, but it's worth it. I would say buy it for all your employees, buy it for Christmas, Hanukkah, Kwanzaa gifts, or just buy it for yourself and invest. So I definitely would recommend this one as well. And also, all these other books I got from Herbert Jolly. He's a former CEO of Best Buy, and now he's a Harvard professor, and these are his favorite books. So that would be my other advice. Share your wisdom. And if you can share your wisdom, we're all going to be better together, because AI is here for good, and we're here to answer any questions. So Bill, any parting words?
No, just thanks for attending, and spread the word. Like the other group said, we're here to meet afterwards. If you have further questions, we're both on LinkedIn, and we're available to sit down with you and your company and help you modernize your back office if you're interested.
Okay. I could use a mic this time. All right, so as people are departing, it's a shame because the next session is really great. I don't know what happened to the second mic. Where's the second mic? There it is. Oh, you got it. Are you absconding with the mics? You don't have an artist space. All right. This is really exciting because the next two people I really enjoyed having the opportunity to connect with. I'm going to start ladies first. Erin Schilling is the digital editor for the Atlanta Business Chronicle. You guys should be following her. She's a star who's definitely on the rise. She first started as a technology reporter and spent a lot of time covering fintech. The Atlanta native graduated from the University of Georgia in 2020, and she enjoys hiking and reading and exploring the city. Erin saw U2 in Atlanta for her first concert. Kareem is the founder and CEO of FairPlay, the world's first fairness as a service company. He has been working on financial inclusion and underwriting hard-to-score borrowers his entire career. As the executive vice president of Zest Finance, Kareem worked with some of America's biggest lenders to adopt AI underwriting. At Softcard, he worked with retailers, financial institutions, and tech companies to democratize mobile payments. In the Obama administration, Kareem helped manage the team with negotiating the Paris Climate Agreement. Thank you very much for that, Kareem. We all appreciate that. He oversaw $33 billion in annual investments into development-friendly projects in emerging markets. He's a contributor to Forbes on AI and financial services and loves boxing, poker, and hip-hop. Kareem's first concert was the Beastie Boys, Friday, March 13th, 1987, at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. Welcome, Kareem. Don't give it up for Kareem.
I'm very excited about this event. I definitely think I got the best So Kareem. All right, well, Kareem is the star of the show here, so I will let him talk a little bit about his background and the company.
Yeah, hey everybody, thanks for coming out. I'm Saleh, founder and CEO of FairPlay. We cheekily refer to ourselves as the world's first fairness as a service company. And we make tools that allow anybody using an algorithm to make a high stakes decision about someone's life to answer 5 questions. Is my algorithm fair? If not, why not? Could it be fairer? What's the economic impact to our business of being fairer? And finally, did we give our declines, the folks we rejected, a second look to make sure that we didn't say no to somebody we ought to have approved? We're fortunate to be working with some of the biggest names in financial services to automate their fair lending testing and reporting and to optimize their algorithmic decisioning systems to be fair. Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Great. Well, first I'm going to talk a little bit more about the problem that we're solving for, because we're talking about home ownership. And I think we're talking about equity in home ownership, which is a particularly interesting conversation to be having here in Atlanta, which is, you know, we have this sort of dual birthplace of the civil rights movement, but some of the highest income inequality in the nation. So talk to me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so many of the folks in the room may know that as a consequence of our unfortunate history of redlining many years ago, the U.S. government passed something called, the Congress passed a law called the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act. And that law requires lenders to submit certain loan level data to the government every year, which in theory should allow us, the public, to construct kind of a picture of the fairness of the mortgage market to see if lenders are redlining. And of course, it's the U.S. government, so they make that data available in like the least helpful format possible. So we scraped all of the data in the Home Mortgage Disclosure Act database to compute essentially what we call a kind of mortgage fairness index, going back all the way to 1990. And what we found is that at the height of the pandemic, when there was this massive government intervention into the mortgage market, the good news is that like mortgage fairness, which we define as kind of the rate at which one group is approved for mortgages relative to another group. So for example, the rate at which women are approved for mortgages relative to men. The good news is that in 2021, at the height of the pandemic, mortgage fairness was well off the lows from the great financial crisis. The bad news was when we ran the analysis back 30 years, we found that there has been no net improvement for most groups in mortgage fairness since 1990, which is to say many groups, whether it's black home buyers, Hispanic home buyers, female home buyers, are approved for mortgages at the peak of 2021 at the same rate as they were in 1990. Not only that, but when we ran the analysis on the 2022 data, we found that mortgage fairness actually dipped on the order of 10% for many groups, in part due to rising interest rates and I think broader uncertainty about the economy. And when we look geographically to see where are those pockets of unfairness for women, for black home buyers, we see that they're concentrated in the South and the Great Plains. One sort of unfortunate fact about being a black home buyer in America, as opposed to being a Hispanic home buyer. So when we ran the analysis for Hispanic home buyers, one of the cool things we found was the more Hispanic your neighborhood, the fairer the mortgage market is to you, which is to say, the more likely you are to be approved for a mortgage. One of the things we found depressing about the study, both for black home buyers and for Native American home buyers, is the more black your neighborhood, or the more Native American your neighborhood, the less fair the mortgage market is to you. So today, as we sit here, black home buyers are approved for mortgages at something like 77% the rate of white home buyers. Native American home buyers are approved for mortgages at something like 74% the rate of white home buyers. And for Native Americans, that number is actually down about 15 percentage points from 1990. So Native Americans used to be approved for mortgages around 95% the rate of white home buyers in 1990. Today they're approved at a rate of about 74%. So that's just to give you some sense of the scale of the problem we're solving, right? These algorithms, left to their own devices, will create disparities for populations that are not well represented in the data. And by the way, I should add, this is not a problem. We're at Fintech South, but this is not a problem that is unique to financial services. In fact, some of the most sophisticated companies technologically struggle with these problems of algorithmic bias. In the last few years, Uber, Facebook, Amazon have all been subject to allegations that their algorithms cause disparities for various historically underserved groups.
And Kareem showed me some of his data, and Atlanta is not doing too well in terms of the fairness scale. There's a lot of, green being the most fair, red being the least. There's a lot of red in Georgia, in Atlanta, and in the South in general. And then just to emphasize some of the things that he's saying in terms of this racial homeownership gap, in 2021, this is based on a Harvard study of US Census data, 73% of white households own their homes, 44% of black households own their homes. So this is, a huge problem. But beyond sort of that altruistic equity standpoint, why should we care? Why should banks care?
Yeah. So I'm not here suggesting that people be fair for fairness' sake. At the animated spirit of our business, backed up by data, is that fairness is good for profits, good for people, and good for progress. What we find, so lenders using our tool, for example, are able to increase their approval rates on the order of 10% without any corresponding increase in risk. They're able to increase their take rates, so sometimes you'll approve someone, but maybe you offer them suboptimal pricing, and so by optimizing the pricing and offering more competitive pricing, you can increase take rates for folks you approve. So lenders using our tool have increased approval rates by 10%, increased take rates by 13%, and increased their fairness to black applicants on the order of about 20%. So our view is that algorithmic fairness can actually make you more money and help you more good.
And then I want to talk a little bit about, discrimination in lending is illegal, right? So tell me how sort of you've gotten here in which, we still have this huge problem of fairness.
Yeah. So I it's funny. I came to be interested in this problem in part because I was trained as a consumer finance lawyer, and as a young lawyer, I would get sent into financial institutions to do fair lending reviews. And what I found was that almost all of the decisioning systems that are being used in financial services exhibit disparities towards people of color, towards women, towards other historically disadvantaged groups. By the way, that's not because the people who made those models or those algorithms are people of bad faith. It's largely due to limitations in data and mathematics. But historically, there haven't been good tools for kind of remedying those disparities within one's risk tolerance. And so what they would do, and so what most financial institutions do, is call in fancy consulting firms and fancy law firms to come up with clever statistical and legal justifications for the discrimination in their algorithms. But the good news is we don't have to do that anymore. That there's actually ways, if we're kind of accept kind of going in as a starting premise that these algorithms left to their own devices might have a tendency to overfit to the majority population, we can do all kinds of things to kind of correct for that bias. And let me sort of try to explain what I mean by that. Let's take a step back. Every algorithm must be given an objective, a target, something that an objective that it seeks to relentlessly maximize. So if you think about, for example, the Facebook algorithm's target or objective is to keep you engaged, and so it's going to do whatever it has to do to keep you engaged, regardless of whether or not whatever it's showing you is good for your mental health or good for society. Right? You didn't tell it to care about your mental health or society. You just told it to care about engagement. And if you take a step back and think about it, giving an algorithm a single-minded objective can create all kinds of unforeseen problems. Imagine if Tesla gave the neural networks that power its self-driving cars the mere objective of getting a passenger from point A to point B. Well, the self-driving car might do that while driving the wrong way down a one-way street or blowing through red lights or causing mayhem to pedestrians. So what does Tesla have to do? It has to give the algorithm that powers its self-driving cars a compound objective. Get the passenger from point A to point B while also respecting the rules of the road. And it turns out that we can do that in financial services too. Predict who's going to default while minimizing disparities for protected groups. And what we find in the course of our work is that something like 25 to 33% of the highest scoring Black, brown, and female applicants for loans that get declined would have performed as well as the riskiest folks who get approved. Which is to say, I'm not telling you that I'm going to take a FICO 500 and turn their performance into an 800, but if you're a lender with a 650 FICO cut, we can find 649s and 648s that are going to perform like 651s and 652s.
So what are some of the things that go into you guys' algorithm that make it more fair?
Yeah, I mean, so we always start with the data that the lender is already using, because we don't want to have to send lenders down a rabbit hole to go find more data. But the thing that we do is expose the model to the fact. So let me take a step back. We have tried for 50 odd years to achieve fairness in lending through blindness, right? The way that lending used to work was like you'd walk into a bank and you'd like sit across the table from a dude, it was always a dude, and he would like try to make the judgment by looking at you about whether or not he thought you were creditworthy. And then like 50 years ago, we said, well, that system is messed up. We're gonna like come up with a better system. And so these two guys, Mr. Fair and Mr. Isaac, who are these very talented statisticians, come up with this score called the FICO score. And the FICO score comes in for a lot of derision today. But when the FICO score was invented, it was like arguably one of the most important inventions of the 20th century, because it now like took this dude out of the picture and gave you this veneer of a dispassionate, unbiased statistical computation. The problem is that we have a history of financial exclusion in America, right? So the data that's available about women, about black applicants, et cetera, is not really representative of our creditworthiness. So that score was kind of biased in favor of the folks who were well represented. Now, of course, we have the ability to, sorry, before I get to that. So like imagine, for example, a variable like consistency of employment. If you think about it, consistency of employment is a totally reasonable variable on which to assess the creditworthiness of a man. But consistency of employment is always going to have a disparity driving effect for women who take time out of the workforce to start a family. And so we kind of like, I think quite reasonably, 50 years ago said, hey, we're going to take consideration of these factors, like are you a woman, outside of our decision-making process. But as a result, we started to rely on these variables that like we think are fair, like consistency of employment, but that actually have unforeseen disparity driving effects. And so maybe what we ought to do is instead of treating everybody, instead of trying to be blind, achieve fairness through blindness, our approach is what we call fairness through awareness. Like maybe we should tell the algorithm, like, hey, you will sometimes encounter a population of people in the world called women. Women will sometimes exhibit inconsistent employment. Before you reject an applicant for inconsistent employment, maybe you should do a check to see if they resemble good applicants on other dimensions that you didn't heavily consider. And so what our system does is basically reweights the variables you're already using in ways that maximize their predictive power, but minimize their disparity driving effect. We're not adding new data, but we are adding new consciousness of the different distributional properties of various applicants. And the good news is it works.
Talk to me a little bit, because you have a big background in politics. So sort of what led you to become a tech entrepreneur personally?
Honestly, politics had basically nothing to do with it. I mean, my parents are immigrants from North Africa, and it was just like a classic American immigrant story. My parents were like highly educated in their home country, spoke the Queen's English, needed a $12,000 loan to start a small business, called on every bank in Chicago, and couldn't get one. And so my mom, who was pregnant with my brother at the time, ended up having to take a job working nights at a toxic chemical plant with lax safety practices. And one night, there was an accident, and she was exposed to radioactive isotopes, and she was rushed to the hospital, and they managed to save her life. We lost my brother, and I'll never forget being a kid in the hospital room with my mom, and the physicians come in to tell her that she's clear to go home. And in my kind of like youthful exuberance, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so great. Mom's coming home. Can we go to Great America, which is the local amusement park, to celebrate? And my mom goes, I can't go to Great America. I'm going back to the toxic chemical plant so we can save the money to start this business. So, access to credit is the sine qua non of modern life. It is the key to upward mobility. It's just kind of my family's experience with the inability to access credit because my parents were inherently hard to underwrite. They got me interested in this problem.
Yeah, last time I talked to Kareem to prep for this panel, I was like, you have completely got me convinced that this is super necessary, we need a new algorithm, we need to do everything. But I want to talk about the people who say no. So the banks who see the solution and say, we don't want this, and sort of what are some of those responses that you have gotten?
Yeah, so it's a combination of things. One is like, lending is at the core of what banks do, right? So like, being like, hey, I'm a guy from Silicon Valley, you should outsource your underwriting to me. Like, not exactly a winning sales method. So some of it I think is just like defensiveness around, hey, underwriting is our core competency. We're never going to work with an outside party on it. Some lenders just don't, they suspect that they have disparities in their algorithms and just don't want to know. We're like, well, we're only going to look kind of if we're forced to look, and if we're forced to look and we find problems, we're going to do our best to sweep them under the rug. I think that there's a new generation of lenders who recognizes that the future of the financial services industry is millennials and Gen Z, and those consumers are demanding fairness from their governments, from their employers, and from the brands that they patronize. And so I think the days of, hey, we can just sweep this stuff under the rug, don't ask, don't tell, those are giving way to a new crop of lenders who take fairness seriously, inquire into it rigorously, and commit themselves with seriousness of purpose to fixing problems when they find them.
And you touched on this a little bit in the beginning of our conversation, but one of you guys' taglines is fairness as a service, so it's not just for mortgage lending. So what are some other sort of use cases for this new algorithm?
Yeah, so we're fortunate to work kind of across the waterfront with consumer and small business credit, everything from mortgage to auto to credit card to installment lending to small business lending, and increasingly we're doing even things like handset device lending. So you walk into a major cell phone retailer, being able to kind of finance the person on the phone. The cool thing about this technology is that it's a technology of general applicability, so it can work in any domain in which an algorithm is used to make a high-stakes decision about someone's life. We started in finance, in lending, because it's the domain we understand best, but we're also doing work in insurance, where the data sets are very similar and the modeling methodologies are very similar. But we see opportunities even further afield in places like healthcare, where increasingly diagnostic tools are being powered by algorithms, and also in places like government services, like predictive policing, for example. So anywhere that an algorithm is being used to make a high-stakes decision about someone's life, we believe that these questions about bias and fairness optimization can be answered.
Do you have any advice for whether it's tech companies or banks trying to innovate more? Like how should they go about sort of seeing, is this algorithm fair? What sort of questions should they be asking?
Yeah, so the good news is there's a set of questions that you can ask that don't require you to be an AI expert. You can ask very simple questions like, is one group experiencing a positive outcome like approval for a loan at a higher or lower rate than another group? Is there a significant difference in price paid by one group relative to another group? You don't have to be an AI expert to ask those questions. You just kind of have to have good sense.
I really have run out of my questions. Do you guys, we have some time, which I'm very surprised about, so do you guys have any questions for Kareem? Yeah.
City competition from Fax and other bureaus and what we're trying to do, or they kind of sitting their heels in?
We're actually super fortunate to be working with a bunch of the bureaus. I think that the bureaus understand that if you're going to be selling data and analytics into regulated financial institutions, that these questions around fairness are going to come up. And what's really cool, actually, is that the bureaus have been very receptive to our message, both because I think they're increasingly focused on data points that can enhance inclusion and generate lift over and above conventional methods. But I think they also perceive an opportunity to sell more data by being fair. So I've actually been very heartened by the reception we've gotten from the major bureaus.
Yes.
I haven't done any follow-up. Could be.
Yeah. Absolutely. So one of the things that is super important to do is monitor these algorithms once you put them into production to make sure that the benefits we project in the lab actually come to fruition in the real life. So we do, as part of any algorithm we push into production, is basically monitored 24/7, 365 with alerting thresholds so that if fairness starts to degrade, We get an email immediately. We can understand what variables are driving that degradation. If something in the model has broken or something in the world has changed. We did start to see some degradation when interest rates rose. One of the things that we find is that when interest rates rise and lenders get tighter, that can be a path to the creation of disparities. That's so interesting.
Hold on, did everyone hear that question? She asked if he's done anything with college acceptances.
We have not, but I think it's a very interesting application.
Erin, since you're doing underwriting for a very highly regulated industry,
yeah, so we've been very, very fortunate to be working with two of the GSEs, and then we've had to undergo regulatory exams by all the federal financial regulators, OCC, FDIC, CFPB. There's some that I'm missing. We basically we understood from the outset that we were going to have an active and intensive dialogue with the regulators on this stuff. And I think there's basically no way to operate in financial services in AI that touches the consumer without that.
Maybe less on like something more at a meta level. Is there ever cases where maybe, for lack of a better word, a bias is actually a good thing? Like, right, where you would want to skew in a certain way to have a certain outcome?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, yes, right. So there could be like, first of all, sometimes like you'll have a bias for one group, but fixing it for that group actually results in a bias for another group. That can be a very difficult trade-off to manage. And sometimes if a product, for example, is not well suited to a particular group, then a bias in favor of giving that group that product actually can have a negative, deleterious outcome. And so there are we do sometimes encounter edge cases where a bias, either remediating a bias creates a problem someplace else, or a bias in favor of a group actually is to the detriment of it.
All right, well, I think that's all the time. Thank you guys so much. I knew you guys were going to ask some good questions.
Can you hear me? Right. What do we have like you know they say best for last. We've had a really great group of people here. First and foremost, for those of you who are in the room, Experion has been the sponsor all day today for the Artificial Intelligence group. You know, in the theme of rock and roll today. Can I hear very quickly from the crowd, Experion rocks? Experion! Experion! Thank you. Right, very quickly. Following this event, they have a cocktail hour, maybe 2 hours, in Innovation Alley, so please make sure that you put that on your diary. And then also I want to very quickly introduce the crowd that's going to come up following. This is the last one of the day. And I'm kind of happy with Kareem and Erin were able to finish a little bit more quickly so I can get through some of the most amazing people for the next track, which is Intelligent Automation in Financial Services, New Efficiencies and Workforce Realities. I'm going to try to make sure I pronounce everybody's name properly. Ladies first. Demi, 9 o'clock, if you could join us on the stage as I'm saying your bio, is a self-professed spark plug of energy and movement. Demi, 9 o'clock, was the youngest of 7 top women leaders in the largest home builder in the world. She's an Ironman finisher. When I say Ironman, I don't know. 12-time marathoner and 6-star finisher, Guinness Book of World Records holder, founder of She Built This City, which I love the name of that website. Empowering women plus and girls in trades. Now she joins as second-time founder and minority female CEO, Diane Yu, and one of only 2% of the female founder, world blazing a trail for mortgage efficiency and new AI-powered lending journey at Tidalwave. Her passion is solving big and moving the needle of equity, proving that we can all harness the power of AI and machine learning to make home ownership more achievable. As a former consultant and TEDx speaker, we have that in common. What would happen if we gave more girls blowtorches? Demi wants everyone to think big and with AI and lean in. Demi's first concert was New Kids on the Block in 1989, and she was 12 years old. Her brother had to take her and her friends. He was 16. and it was like a birthday gift to her, and he hid in the bathroom mortified most of the concert. Bravo him. Now, this gentleman goes by Yogs, but I'm going to try to pronounce his name properly. Yogaraj Jayaprakasam. Did I say it right? Okay, bravo. Please join us to the stage. He's the Chief Technology and Digital Officer responsible for leading all aspects of Deluxe Technologies' digital assets, information security, infrastructure, and business resiliency to support the company's transformation for a 100-plus-year-old check printing company into a digital payments and data company. Yogs brings a blend of tech and digital transformation expertise from his startup, consulting, and Fortune 100 financial services company experience into his role at Deluxe. Data, AI, and intelligent automation are core to Deluxe's transformation, and he puts human front and center of this transformation. He holds several patents and innovation awards in the data, machine learning, and digital transformation efforts. He regularly speaks at industry forums and at the UC Berkeley at their CTO training program. He enjoys reading, hiking, writing, running, and community activities. The first album Yogs ever purchased was from a Bollywood movie called Orja by composer A.R. Rahman. I pronounced that probably, yes. Please allow me to introduce, since we have something in common, so I'm really kind of excited to introduce Jethro. Jethro Lloyd here to the stage. Jethro, if you could take the third chair here. He's a visionary, and he shares his insights on independent software quality assurance and testing, revolutionizing the way we actually approach software development and deployment. He has over 2 decades actually of experience at the helm of iLAB. Jethro Lloyd has been instrumental in setting and raising the global standard for software quality assurance. Starting from a team of just 15 testers, he has transformed iLAB into a dynamic organization comprising of more than 800 innovators now, strategists and quality leaders. Not only is Jethro a visionary leader, but he is also an engaging and dynamic speaker. His passion for software quality assurance is infectious, and his ability to captivate audiences leaves a lasting impact. Through his presentation, he will share practical strategies, industry insights, and thought-provoking anecdotes, and will empower you to enhance the quality of software in your organization. Many state government agencies and private sector organizations have benefited from iLAB's approach to system modernization, helping them mature their software quality assurance practices. Jethro's first album was by Queen. It was an album called The Works, and his first concert was the Rolling Stones just after the first elections when Nelson Mandela became president at the end of apartheid. Bravo, Jethro, because I'm a huge, I don't know if you can tell, but I'm a huge Rolling Stones fan. They were my first concert as well, but that was fun. Please allow to the stage Dr. Mark Moyu, but he loves to go, Moyu, but he likes to go by Mark. He's a senior data scientist at NVIDIA. Mark is responsible for developing scalable machine learning solutions for top North American retailers with previous roles at LucidWorks, Alstom Transportation. He brings a wealth of experience in machine learning applications. Dr. Moyu, who holds advanced degrees in systems engineering, also actively contributes to the tech community. As the host of AI Portfolio Podcast, please subscribe to his podcast, it's brilliant. The Caribbean Tech Pioneers Podcast, and the Southern Data Science Conference here in Atlanta. His first concert was actually the celebration of music called Carnival that takes place in his native islands of Trinidad and Tobago. And also, please want to remind all of you of the Industry Night Party that begins following this presentation of an Innovation Alley in the Georgia Ballroom immediately following. Please give it up for these lovely people. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon. So once again, thank you very much to Experion for sponsoring this particular event. What's very interesting is that we can get cheap houses with the speakers that we have to do. We can get cheap houses, we can get paid faster, transform our businesses, and we can essentially deploy software a lot faster because it will actually work, because we've tested it. Okay? But what I wanted to sort of begin with, we're in the age of generative AI. Okay? And beyond generative AI, there's accelerated compute, and all of these things are starting to show tremendous consumer value. And now it's sort of creeping its way into enterprise. What are each of you most excited about for how AI is going to transform your businesses here? Demi, you can start.
Well, and first I have to apologize. She asked for our first concerts, and that's what I have to live down, is New Kids on the Block. So I'm dating myself, but I'm 46, and yeah, I chose New Kids on the Block, not the Rolling Stones. So my kids hate me. But what I'm the most excited about AI is, not to keep it in my side of the industry, I'm AI in mortgage, which could terrify you if you're a regulator. I heard the prior session be talking about regulation. A lot of that is hitting our industry, but it's hitting everyone in different ways, whether you're in wealth management, payments, we're considered emerging tech and AI. That's everybody. First of all, anyone. Is there any chief risk officers in the room? Just out of curiosity. No, good, I can say whatever I want. No, actually, the big piece of what I deal with right now is CROs, because they're trying to mitigate risk for their portfolio companies, just like PE firms, in big banks and FIs. So effectively, what I get excited about is saying, listen, I'm not on the side of AI where I have to be fraud. I see a lot of this right now, and it's very active, great, engaging communication that we need to be talking about. But what I get to focus on is something that's more what we call proactive conversational AI. We're not a chatbot. We're not creating chatbots. Those are necessary, and that's what we started with years ago. But what we get to do is say, how are we going to make this such an amazing consumer experience? And so when somebody always comes up to me, and anybody in the AI space is like, oh, you're replacing humans. It's like, yeah, okay, let's have a discussion, have a seat. It's like, how are we making it so much better for the consumers based on consent? So in my world, again, so I'm coming from one lens. I know you can fight me all day on this from a lot of different lenses in AI, as we should have these active conversations. I'm the most with the proactive conversational. And that's what I'm patenting with our company. We came out of Better Mortgage. Hold the applause, I'm kidding. Really from a digital mortgage platform. So we did the workflow automation piece of that. And now we're adding to that, how can we make things that were so redundant. I mean, if anyone's had a mortgage application and you've enjoyed it, please stand up and do cartwheels down the stage, because no one has. I've had 5 houses and I've hated every second of it, and I'm in the business. So what we can bring to the table is saying, instead of asking the same 6 questions that Trip Trid, if you know anything about mortgages, we can say, all I need is your name and your consent to pull information. And P.S., if you haven't already known this, and especially if you're a CTO in the room or CIO, is they're giving us consent. So we've got to be reactive, proactive and reactive. Reactive to the consumers who have already given Alexa their consent. They've already given consents in so many different places. Just ask a teenager. I have 2 of them. They give way too many consents. Let's turn that to the positive, saying, what is that going to change in your business? Thanks to conversational AI, which is much more where I sit in the spectrum of AI. And how we can answer questions faster and make a much better experience for your consumers. And you can find out more data because they're consenting to give you their data. You're not pulling data and taking it from them.
Thank you. And I'm so glad Dorothea mentioned about industry party after this. I was worried that we are the last session and how many will really stick around. So really appreciate you guys are here. I think looking at the generative AI breakthrough, I had a conversation with my daughter recently. She's a 12th grader getting ready for her college. She wants to go to something in biomedical and that did not want to do anything with the computers. I asked her why, and she said, both you and mom work in computers, and I really want to stay far away from that. I said, I don't think you can do it. There is going to be only 2 jobs in the world. Either you tell the computer what to do, or you are on the other end doing what computer tells you to do. So you choose which side you want to be. And I truly believe that is becoming true with the breakthrough of generative AI. When I look at my business from Deluxe standpoint, our job is to transform the company. We are a 108-year check printing company, transforming into payments and data company. So that basically means that we are the ones printing paper and floating in the industry. We also have to digitize everything and remove all the friction in the process. We truly can do all of that with the possibilities of generative AI and the breakthrough that is happening in the industry. I look at every function inside the company first, whether it is engineers, sales, marketing, HR, legal, all of our jobs are going to be reimagined. And if we embrace it with the open arms, we can completely take advantage of everything that AI has to offer. But more exciting part is we can delegate the work that we all hate to do. You all know at least 20% of your job you hate to do, and you can now delegate it to AI and focus more on making things better for your end customers. And even when you look at the end customer journey, I see a lot of possibilities on how we can deliver our payment experience totally different than how we are doing it today. So I'm truly excited about the possibilities. Of course, we all continue to talk about the safety and fairness of the AI, which I believe will be a collective sport. We all have to join hands to do it together. But at the cost of fear, we cannot lose the big opportunity that is in front of us.
That's a tough act to follow. The two of you guys are fantastic. So, if I may defend the Rolling Stones concert, I was forced by my older sister to attend it. I probably knew one song by the Rolling Stones, but obviously at the end of that concert, I was definitely trying to figure out what he had taken in his life, that he had so much energy. So, growing up in South Africa over that time, there were no concerts, so the opportunity to go to any concert was amazing, and I was very lucky to have Rolling Stones being the first one. So I probably would have enjoyed your concert more at the time when I was at that age. But so AI is a fabulous concept. It's a fabulous thing. It's amongst us. It's emerged. It's being used by so many, so often, and so regularly that the reality of artificial intelligence is every part of my life. Every time I sit in front of any kind of decision maker in business, they're saying, how can I apply AI into my business? How can I use it? I've got a guy coming and sending me AI for customer experience. I've got a guy coming and sending me AI for some kind of risk management, whatever it might be. But the truth of the matter is, like anything that we do from a technology perspective, it has to have and be driven by some kind of business case. We have to be able to always measure everything we do against what we're trying to achieve. In 2018, the massive trends around blockchain. Everybody was talking about blockchain. I remember I went to a Gartner conference and everybody said, blockchain, we're going to use it everywhere. And I had a client that was in pension funds that had no business asking the question, that said, well, if I don't apply blockchain by the end of the year, I'm going to be out of work because my bosses are putting pressure on me to use blockchain. So my excitement for AI is similar to my excitement that I have for my teenage son, my 14-year-old. Every day, I have a 50% chance of him delivering what I need him to do and 50% chance of him not. But what I do know in the application of that AI, and my son is the same thing, if I narrow down the focus and I ring fence it around proper strategic objectives within my business, firstly I can implement it, but more importantly I can test it. So for the risk people, the guys, the naysayers in the organization that say, don't use it, there's going to be fraud, there's going to be risk, there's going to be all these kind of things. I think in the previous discussion, there was a huge emphasis on equity, that everybody was treated the same way. Applying it correctly and then being able to build a use case to test it and evaluate what you're doing is always the key. And that's where I see the excitement of AI. And I agree with you. It's not there to replace jobs. It's there to enhance what we're doing because we don't have a choice. We're no longer banks. We're IT companies that do banking. We're no longer insurance companies. We're IT companies that do insurance. Consumers want stuff now, immediately, instantaneously. They want to swipe left for a loan. You understand? And a date. Maybe they can get both in the same application. Is it left or right? I don't know. I'm 45. I didn't use any of that. So, but that's my feeling. For me, it's almost like the tale of two cities. It's the best of times and the worst of times. And we have to be very conscientious of how we're applying it and not assume that it is applied to everything. Okay?
Great. So there's this notion of different generations interacting with AI. How many of you in the room have used ChatGPT, just by show of hands? Okay, so can I consider this is a new filtering mechanism for generation? It's no longer by age, it's now by having used AI, which gets very interesting. I think one thing that excites me a lot about a lot of the machine learning advancements that are coming, I think, is liberation of the individual. So each of us has gifts, right? So we live in a marketplace, we have to do things to sort of feed ourselves, but also as human beings, we each have gifts, and I think a lot of the generative AI capabilities enable us to really amplify those gifts and not necessarily have dependencies in order to maybe make something financially viable. So you might make a living off things you more enjoy, maybe other things you have to do. But outside of that, I think within a business, each of us wants to possibly rise the corporate ladder or express ourselves to the best of our capabilities in terms of delivering value. And I think this is one of the main areas. An individual can now transform a company by leveraging a lot of the AI capability. So I'm going to turn it to Yogs. Before ChatGPT came out in November 2022, I was looking this up. February 2023, seems like the whole world changed and we're into a new age of history. So before that, you were responsible for a lot of business transformation, and I'm sure there was a way that you were thinking about it before that time. How are you now thinking about it post ChatGPT's adoption?
First, I think the speed in which ChatGPT achieved 100 million users is unbelievable. My first reaction is disbelief, then sort of excitement, because after that several months, I probably spent more time, my kids would make fun of me, that I spent more time talking to ChatGPT, Bard and Bing than talking to them and engaging with them. But what I realized in that process is the generative AI breakthrough is just the beginning of the iceberg. And the value chain, if you start to look at it, NVIDIA, starting with NVIDIA and the breakthrough that you guys have come up with, your last quarter earnings proves that your value chain already started. So it starts with chip maker and hardware, then the scale goes up to the software provider like Microsoft. You all will soon experience the Copilot promise that Microsoft is experiencing. If you haven't looked at that, you should definitely have a look at that. They completely reimagined how we are engaging with their office products today. And that actually puts the value chain up into a lot of the software companies, including the one that Demi is talking about, starting to engage and reimagine how you are creating the product. And eventually, each one of us who are in business, we got to reimagine value for our internal customers, which is each of our employees, and external customers. So prior to February 2023, our technology and the business strategy included automation as an initiative. So basically the idea is, take robotic process automation or some data and machine learning automation applied to siloed processes. But after that, it's a company-wide strategy. We haven't made a lot of investment yet, but beginning next year, right now a lot of what we are doing is experimentation to make sure that we are not jumping the gun into things that are still not proven. But we are thoughtfully applying three strategic focus there. One is, are there real value to be had for our internal and external customers? Two, can we still deliver what we are delivering within the confinement of the customer journey? It could be internal or external. You don't want to create something in parallel that disrupts the day-to-day activity of your employees. Three, seriously about privacy and compliance. Can we deliver AI following all the regulatory and compliance processes as well? So we have taken that. Now it is basically a board-level visibility and strategic pillar. Going into next year, it's part of a clear strategy. So we are reimagining every aspect and every job function of the company, and that is the approach that we are taking right now.
And are you sort of moving forward with a lot more internal use cases for testings before you go?
Yeah, you never want to test anything with your customer data. You first want to be sure that your customer data is safe and you are able to account for internal data biases. You actually build very responsible testing methodology for your AI outcomes. It takes a lot of time, but if I can give a piece of advice that I'm actually following for my company would be, a lot of your technology and platform providers are already adopting AI into their software. So can you be part of that experimentation so you're not alone trying to experiment something? But as you build more confidence, how do you reimagine for your end customers as well? So I would not say that we are waiting to experiment for our end customer, but we are waiting to launch it with our end customers. We are experimenting at the same time.
Okay, on to Demi. So task automation is, I think, now a reality, and I think something I like to say is humans are not necessarily replaced, tasks are replaced, tasks are completed by humans, so therefore that's how that value chain sort of works out. I think it's a very interesting time to see where companies can scale without necessarily scaling their headcount. So from your perspective, I think in terms of sizes of firms, you work for probably on the smaller side, but I think you guys are punching above your weight. what excites you the most about how smaller firms can leverage AI to do great things?
I love it. I mean, on both sides of the coin. So, we're in beta. We're in the tech build phase. We've got $5 million in the bank that's seed and going for Series A hopefully here next June. Really MVP clients coming up. We've got a really good pipeline. And I say this, I'm not selling air. I'm really selling something, or I wouldn't be in this company at 46. We've all had something where we're like, I love it. I'm just going to keep saying punching above our weight. We're the little engine that could, but we have a really great idea and we solve big. We're not boiling an ocean. We're taking a small horizontal slice of a $60 billion originations market. That's absolutely possible with a serviceable available market. Sorry to go into a VC pitch of more like 20 billion. I mean, I'll take it all day and I'll take 1/1800th of that and be fine with it because it's a really great VC pitch. But effectively, it can be of any size. So if I'm talking to an FI who, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, so the land of the banks, right? Atlanta's a payments town, I've been told today, and we're a banking town in Charlotte. Apparently, we can't get along. The farmers and the cowmen can be friends. I don't understand that. But sorry for anybody that's not from the East Coast or the Southeast. But effectively, if you're an FI like a Wells Fargo, my husband's a Wells, we're in the Wells family, I get it. Not in mortgage, thank goodness, because we couldn't have two of that, just like your teenagers. But for an FI like them, that's a 6% market cap in mortgage. Effectively, they need to either figure out how to make it a smaller business because of the rates and the cannibalistic nature, and they've got to diversify into commercial banking. So someone like us who can come in with AI capabilities can do the work of 10 people if you have one LO left, one loan originator. That's not firing your whole staff. We're just making the one LO you have left while you have 7% rates, which, by the way, anybody who's been in this for 20 years and had 5 houses like me, 7% is okay. We are all going to live. We're not dying because it's not 2% rates anymore. Don't get me started on that. So if you're that big, there's capabilities in there, and let's face it, banks care about how much they're spending and shareholder value, right? Whereas if you're a smaller, this was my big surprise, and then moving on, because I know not everyone cares about mortgage origination, but as it pertains to AI and you're caring about that, in terms of size, that a big surprise to me when I was doing my customer discovery about 3-4 months ago was lenders. And I was like, oh, lenders are feeling the pain, right? All of these lending institutions are like, you can't get out of this. There's no diversification. You either shut your shop or you sell, to somebody bigger like a credit union, or you figure it out, right? And honestly, they were the ones defending and saying, I have people that I'm not firing. I'm not laying off. We're keeping them because there's a fixed channel of business I rely on from that channel. And that's any industry, right? So whatever industry you're in, you don't have to be in mortgage to have this. Find out where the fixed channels are. And that's to what Yogs was saying. We're going to make them supercharged and efficient. So what I found in the discovery was to that point, it was like, you're doing tasks that are so ridiculous, redundant, and wasting time when you have to go and be a business generator. And you're still doing things that should be automated. I called it Roz from Monsters, Inc. If you've ever seen that movie, she's like, no, push the document, no, push it over again. We have so many Rozes in the piece, and those people are miserable in that job. They just want to be out in front of a customer and saying, I want to make them happy. So that's my lens on this, is saying, if it's a small company, I'm going to supercharge the humans that are there by doing what we're talking about, is taking redundant, inefficient tasks off your plate. And then also the circle back in that discovery is what my company can do with the patents that we have that are non-provisional, that are coming, that we're so excited about, is to say, not only can we do that and do the workflow automation, which, by the way, I cannot say this enough, I will go on a huge PR campaign about this. Do not get told that workflow automation tools are AI tools. They are not. Workflow automation tools are getting so confused with AI. I get that all the time. Like, you're a blend. You're a workflow automation, pre-verification tool. No, we're not. Because again, we're blowing up what we are asking people to do to pre-approve for a loan. And that could eventually be cars, that could eventually be insurance. So InsurTech and FinTech, you're going to see come right back together again. This is all platforming, right, with AI. And I can't wait to see that in the next couple of years, just like blockchain. What are we going to be saying about AI in 2 or 3 years? Remember when we were talking about AI? It's just going to be part and parcel of everything we do. It's not an AI company. So effectively, back to your direct question so you can move on, is it doesn't matter the size. It's the business case to what Jethro was saying, like the smaller companies are going to be looking at for efficiency of the people that are left. It all comes back down to business case and profitability. How are you going to make them more profitable? And then if you're using that for retention of the people that have the fixed channels of business, use it to make them better. And if it's something that's a large FI or financial institution, credit union, top 20, they're really up there, then they're going to be replacing business units, but they have been in the hiring and firing boom that has crushed everyone for decades. So that's not going to be a surprise to anything. If anything, it just helps their retention because the Wells Fargos of the world, and I can say that, we're in a banking town, Bank of America, Truist, everyone goes through these cycles, especially on the mortgage side, that we can replace that by doing really smart AI-driven tasks that can say, the humans that are left, if it's one, we can do the work of 10 to 20 of them so that you can keep the one.
Great.
So I think if you don't mind, Mark, one thing that I wanted to add, particularly when you compare bigger companies versus smaller, I used to be part of Fortune 100 company before, and now I work for Fortune 1000. I know the resources that I had before. We used to dedicate hundreds of data scientists, a lot of focus on machine learning, building things on your own. But when your scale changes, you now have the equal playing field with the innovation that's coming out, because AI is embedded everywhere. Any software that now you buy, you will be able to afford AI and the advanced tools to solve the same problems that you are solving compared to the bigger banks that Demi called out as well. So that's what honestly excites me as well. I just wanted to add to your comment.
One of the things, you can go home like this. How many of you in this room have a task in your job that you would love to be automated? You'd never love to do that. Oh, interesting. Everyone else loves every single client that they love. Good to you.
They're sitting next to their bosses.
Well, true story. Yeah, you gotta. You also have to be very careful in some of these things. That's an interesting point. That's a little harder to solve. From a ChatGPT perspective, you could solve it. So AI and software development are now best friends. We can use AI to generate software significantly faster. We can use AI to generate software tests, to test a lot of our software. So Jethro, what should leaders developing software keep in mind about leveraging AI in this new software development lifecycle?
So I think the reality is AI was going to definitely go to software generation as one of the places pretty quickly, because if you look at the evolution of software and how much software there is and how many products and what the huge demand is, there is a skill shortage. Those are the realities, and that skill shortage that you saw coming back all the way to the late 1990s, when you had real engineers spending longer periods of time to develop software, especially in the banking industry, we were building it in mainframe technology and all that. The change that was put on them, or the requirement for them to change their software, was far less than it is now. Now we adopt agile practices, and every 2 weeks we're expecting some kind of release of software of sorts. The problem is the software has gotten smaller, there's lots more of it, and it's more integrated, and the risk curve has extended itself even greater. And if you introduce now the ability for an individual that maybe isn't strong on the engineering side, but maybe has a bit of business understanding, and you're telling them to generate code that's going to run what you do from a banking perspective, whatever it might be, you're introducing, compounding risks as far as that software is concerned. It was interesting, leading up, I read an article of a software producer that is generating AI to find the vulnerabilities that AI is creating in code. So you've got people that are using code generation tools, AI code generation tools, and now you're buying another AI to check whether or not the AI hasn't pulled vulnerabilities into your software. So from a software quality assurance perspective, the reality is there's never enough time to test the software, because business wants software out as quickly as possible, because maybe it's a differentiator. Let's take mortgage origination. I agree completely with you. It's the most awful, horrible experience. And guess what? I come from South Africa. It's international. It's like traffic. It's internationally painful and horrific, right? And the reality is, there's always a perception from the consumer that many of the business processes that we have to endure is because they hate us, right? They don't want our business or whatever it is, but it's obviously the opposite, right? The reality of software testing is there isn't time, and there aren't enough testers. Some organizations have responded to it by hiring giant teams sitting in places like the Philippines. Now, show of hands, how many people here have been to the Philippines? It's not the biggest country in the entire world. It's many, many islands, but hundreds of islands, thousands of islands perhaps, okay? Great place to scuba dive if you ever want to go scuba diving. But that is also not a solution, because eventually that's going to get like many of the other countries that are using. So AI for us in the software quality assurance and testing space is definitely enablement technology for us to achieve more coverage and to do more testing. Now, we spoke about automation. A traffic light is an automated process. Okay, so when we talk about automation in quality, it's the ability to repeat tests over and over again with different data sets that give you large coverage to mitigate the risk of an application. For us in AI, the value of AI allows us to use components of AI to use for image recognition, for parts that we could never use before, or parts that we had to hard code and would be time consuming. So what AI has allowed us to do in our business in software quality assurance is to partner it with the activities we do from a software quality assurance perspective, and for us to do more in a much shorter period of time. Exactly what AI is supposed to do for us. More in exactly the same time. Not replace, not get rid of, but for us to do more. Because if you could test everything before you release it, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you cover your risk 100% if you could? And that's really the ambition or the desire by including AI into what we do.
Staying with you, are there any significant differences in testing AI software versus regular software?
So that's a great question, because it's more the outcomes of what AI does that you would test, like any other software. I wouldn't necessarily test the specific software to check for. I would test the outcomes of what that software is supposed to do from a business perspective. The reality is the size and scope of what we're able to achieve now, what we could achieve 10 years ago, is increasing tenfold, 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 tenfold. And probably my only fear is, can we keep up with that technology debt? Can we deliver as organizations, as banks and insurance companies, that you're releasing out software? Can you keep up with what you're releasing? Or is the desire to deliver services overpowering your concept of governance and risk? And we see sometimes that happening, and then we see them in the news when that happens. But I think most financial institutions are cognizant of this and are being fairly cautious in their approach from an AI perspective. So,
how many people feel overwhelmed by the amount of AI news and stuff that comes out?
Yeah.
Okay. So the rest of you, I would love to pose this question to each of you, because I'm overwhelmed every day. And I think imposter syndrome is now like 10x thing, as you see different things come out. So to each of you, how do you keep up to date with a lot of the AI stuff? And in addition, each of you has purview to execute certain executive decisions about what AI gets incorporated into your businesses. What's now your decision criteria to get something into a 12-month cycle?
So, I mean, that's probably the million-dollar question that any decision maker is making. How long should I take to adopt a piece of technology? How do I keep up? I think you have to sort of resign yourself to the fact that you won't keep up with everything that's being released, but you'll certainly do your best through your own education and reading and exposure to your colleagues. And I've learned something certainly today, spending time with you guys. But I think, like all technology, you have to have a view of understanding its value, but being always certain that you understand the value as it relates to your business case. There's lots of technology out there that is absolutely fabulous that that gives me no value in my organization. And I think you have to not be bamboozled by the oversubscription of these trends, like I mentioned, blockchain, big data, it's cloud. I mean, it's all these big words that are pushed out at us, and they and then you like something on LinkedIn, and then you're in big trouble, because now you're getting thousands of articles, and they all contradict each other. But humans are smart. We're smart. We've worked with technology for a very long time. We know the reality is that there is no Jarvis yet. It might come. There is no Jarvis. Jarvis from the Avengers. I mean, I'd like Jarvis, but it turns out he wasn't a great guy because he ran away with my girls. So, but we're not quite there yet. And I think my colleagues here have approached it very intelligently by looking at specific layers and focuses of where it delivers business value and learning from them. So that's how I go about it.
I think keeping up with the AI development is pretty similar to any other technology, but I effectively use AI to learn as well. I can now go to a Bing or Bart and say, teach me quantum like you would teach it to a grandma. You can easily understand the concept. So I would continue to do it. I think most important perspective that I try to take is AI is not done to us, it is done with us. Meaning we need to engage with each other, collaborate. It is like cyber security. It's not going to get perfect by itself. The more we talk to each other, more we figure out how to safely apply, is how we are going to get the value out of it. In terms of decision criteria, like what Jethro said, it starts with business case. Yes, I can dabble with some of the technology on the side, but I will never invest investors' money into something that I don't know that's going to produce the value. So spending more time, I always tell this to my team, fall in love with the problem before you solve it. So going deeper to understand that is number one. Number two is it least disruptive in the way that you deliver? And three is, can you measure it? If you cannot measure it, then you shouldn't be doing that as well. So those are the simple things that I try to follow for our company.
Yeah, I know we're getting to the end here, and I'm trying to think of some like phenomenal nugget. First, the perspective of me is I came right out of, I say blockchain, and going down this like memory lane of technology that I came out of college and literally it was 1999 and Y2K, and I went to work for a startup where I had a Razor scooter, a pink fuzzy pen, and we thought the world was going to end, right? And like, well, the world is still here, and we have generations of kids and even grandkids at this point. Me, not a grandkid yet, but effectively like look at it the same way of like, this is a massive space, and I can't stand it as a journalism major, actually, from college, of like, if it bleeds, it leads. And that's how I feel about AI right now. You can look, pull up any news site, and it's just like, AI. And you're like, I see why it's exhausting for people. And so for me in the business, I try to keep it as like, what is relevant to me? And the opposite of that is what is relevant to my kids. So I stay on, any of us who have teenagers, we've all referenced it, I have a 12th grader as well, choosing colleges, what do we do? Another one is at college, and it's like, what's relevant to them, because they're the future of who's going to be making decisions financially, especially the early 20-year-olds. And then secondarily, like for me, I look at it from a front of house perspective of like, again, I'm B2B to X. I think it was the founder of Cabbage that said that earlier, and I thought that was brilliant because I've been trying to name it for the last couple of months. Like, it's nurturers. It's like this other kind of, is it a silo? Is it a vertical, or is it just something else? And it literally is, it's B2B to X. How is AI going to focus on your sales? Or if you affect consumers in any way. To me, it's 100xing me to somebody else, and that's what AI is going to do. And then breadcrumbing. So I will say that's something that's been really big on our potential clients is anyone who has a fixed channel of business with a person that's still at the center of it, AI is helping them by breadcrumbing. There's things they're not able to get to in their sales or marketing processes that if we could breadcrumb them to get them to the sale, I think old Expedia, that type of thing, and now all we use is, we don't use travel agents anymore. We're not putting the people out of business. We're just saying, like, where can they be used in a more relevant fashion? And we're being asked to breadcrumb. So hopefully I coined a term for here. But actually that was told to me by a loan originator. It's like, could you just breadcrumb? Because I'm losing the breadcrumbs because I'm trying to keep up with the crap I have to deal with. So that's how I see AI and how to keep up with it in my relevance.
Okay. We're out of time, so thank you very much to our panelists there. Hopefully you enjoyed the discussion, and we'll close off here.